Hi, everyone. I hope you were able to make some new connections in the lounge and check out the latest innovations in tech at the exhibition. Welcome back to track number 2 in the Festival of Creative Operations. I'm Christina Hoodart. If you don't know me, I'm a specialist in digital asset management. And if you want any help building your DAM practice, drop me a message on the conference platform or find me on LinkedIn. We are now joined by Nish Patel, host of CreativeOps.fm, a platform where Nish interviews creative operations leaders from around the world. Today, he'll be talking about gamification, the untapped superpower in creative ops. And now, without further ado, over to the very talented Nish.
Great. Thanks very much, Christina, for that kind introduction, and welcome everybody. I hope you've been learning a lot through the sessions. I haven't been able to attend them all, but they all look fantastic. So what are we going to cover off today with? Let's see. What should you expect in the next 20 to 25 minutes? And hopefully we'll leave a little bit of time for some questions at the end in today's session. So whenever I'm doing one of these sessions, just because of the number of creative ops people and teams I've had a chance to spend time with over the last, I think it's like 7-8 years now, there's all sorts of stories and examples I can share around most any topic, and they range from the complex to the simple. Today, because of the time, and so that everybody gets something out of this and they can walk away with things that they can do tomorrow back at the office, I'm going to err on the side of simple. But if you want to have a follow-up conversation and talk about your specific scenario and a gamification opportunity that you could or trying to design in as part of your creative ops process, feel free to reach out to me. In fact, I'll say for anyone who's listening to this and attending this live right now, if you do email me at any point today, I'd be more than happy to spend a couple of hours with you at any time in the next couple of months. And there's no cost for that. I am truly a big groupie of all things creative ops, and I love doing this stuff. So gamification in creative ops, when a few folks I know in the industry saw the title, they reached out to me and said, "Are you serious? Like, you're going to talk about creative ops being a game?" And they were coming at me with, is this an arcade game or something like that? And I just want to be clear right from the start. We're not talking about designing a video game that either you or maybe one of your kids is playing at home on their Nintendo or Xbox or anything like that. But we are going to be talking about taking some of the elements that you're going to find in any game, whether it's a video game, a sales game, or any other game that we might be playing in either our personal or professional lives, and talking about how we can incorporate some of those common game elements into our world of creative operations and use it to drive forward the goals that we're trying to achieve. So what is gamification? What do the Wikipedia nerds tell us that it is? So I went and grabbed a couple of definitions. You could read this at your own leisure if you want to watch the recording later on. But a few things to sort of hone in on that are underlined and bolded here. So gamification is really about how do we enhance current systems or really processes, especially when we're talking about creative operations, because it's all about the process. And then how we use technology and all the people within that process to try and motivate them to achieve certain targets. And we know in creative operations, we've got all sorts of processes that we're always trying to improve. It could be all the way from the adoption of a new technology, adoption of a new process, like the creative brief process, improving a process, like how quickly we're moving through the review and approval cycle. And we're going to see an example of that today in terms of what one organization did and designed a very simple creative ops game to improve how quickly they were getting feedback during the review and approval process. But again, it's really about using game elements to enhance existing processes by motivating the people involved in that process. And through that motivation, getting them to work towards certain goals that you have and share with them, whether they know what those goals are or don't know what those goals are. So this is about making creative operations into a game. And as we all know, whenever you turn something into a bit of a game, it's actually fun. So it stops being about the work and, oh, I have to comply with this process. And it starts being fun and you get a lot more adoption. So moving on here. Oh, sorry. And so to just sum that up in terms of what we're looking to do with gamification and creative operations, I've mentioned words like motivating, like fun. It's really all about, tapping into our human nature. I think the mistake that we make, not just in creative operations, but in work in general, is that we've got this very top-down mentality where we go, well, it's your job. You should follow my creative brief process. It's your job. You should get me feedback as quickly as possible. It's your job. You should properly tag that asset with the required metadata and put it into the digital asset management system that I have no doubt Christina has probably had to repeat a million times over, herself being a damn professional. But if you can incorporate some game elements and tap into our core human nature of fun, motivation, rewards, things like that, then you're going to be a lot more successful in getting people to buy in versus just saying, it's your job, you're paid to do this, or I'm above you on the org chart. Human beings don't react great to that. They react incredibly well to games, because think of all the games that we all play in different parts of our lives. I apologize, I'm having a hard time clicking through on all the next slides. So today it's really about like productivity focused creative ops gamification. And there's really three things that I want to focus in on. And going back to what I said at the start, these games can be complex, and I've been involved in helping a couple of teams design really complex creative ops games. And through that, they've been able to substantially improve their processes, or they can be simple. And games can have all sorts of different elements that tap into extrinsic and intrinsic human needs and desires. But today we're really only going to be talking about three in the couple of examples that I'm going to show you. And I'm actually going to wrap up at the end with the 6 things you could do to design your own simple creative ops game, so that you could go back to the office tomorrow and actually do these things and not worry about, well, I got to go get a game designer, I got to go and get some fancy technology or anything like that. And you'll see that towards the end. So what are the 3 core components of human nature we're going to tap into to design some simple creative ops games to improve process? One is competition, or sometimes it's cooperation with a competitive element. And we'll see an example of that. 2 is status. Human beings, part of our nature is that we're status creatures. We always compare ourselves to each other. I compare myself to perhaps my siblings, my friends. We compare ourselves based on our professions, our wealth, the clothes that we're wearing. And today we do this on steroids, because we're all doing it and comparing ourselves to each other on social media. But status is a big part of human nature. And so is competition, and so is cooperation. And if you can tap into human nature, then you're really onto something. And the last part is rewards. Human beings like rewards. We're incented by them. It's in our nature to want to be rewarded for the things that we are doing. It's why we all show up at work. We want to be rewarded for the time we're putting in. It's why we do certain things for the people in our lives, because we want to be rewarded, perhaps not monetarily, but with love or affection and loyalty in return. So these are 3 key parts of human nature that also then form parts of these simple creative ops games that you can design to improve processes starting tomorrow. So let's go and look at a couple of examples. So this is a real life example. I'm not going to tell you the name of the organization. And this is the review and approval speed game. You're going to see this is dead simple. And I guarantee you, I'm not going to say 100%, but I'm pretty sure 98% of you could design and deploy this game within 7 days in each and every one of your organizations. But And again, if you would like assistance with that and would like to bat around some ideas, then just drop me a note at your convenience. So what was the target? So they wanted to reduce the time between sending out a version of a piece of content they're working on, could have been version 1 or version 5, and the time it took to get feedback, whether it was an internal or an external stakeholder. So the marketer or somebody else who needed that piece of content put into a campaign or for some other need. And they're finding there's just too much lag. And it wasn't because people were trying to get in their way of the creative ops team getting their job done. Everyone is busy. They have lots of things on the go. Their inboxes are getting filled. And, oh, there's another notification from the creative ops team for something I have to review. I'll just hit snooze on that and I'll get back to it later. So the creative ops team was thinking, how do we sort of speed that up? Because the quicker we're getting feedback, the quicker we can make those changes and try and get the version approved and final and move on to the next project. So what was the competition they designed? It was to very simple. They wanted to track feedback response times by individuals. So the way this in-house team was set up is that they had a creative ops team and they had a number of clients across the organization. And the creative ops team was set up as sort of a set of pooled capacity. So what they did is they said, okay, let's just start tracking when we send a version out, like Monday at 9:56 a.m., how quickly does it take that person who we sent it out to give us feedback? Or if there's multiple people, how long do each one of them take? And as part of this, they created a status channel. And the status channel was just a way of everybody knowing where they stood. So remember, we talked about status. You want to know how you rank compared to the others. And all they did was they started to track things through an Excel spreadsheet when they would send a piece of content out, when they would get feedback from the recipient. And they just started to track it in a very simple spreadsheet, Excel, Google Sheets, whatever have you. And then they just were able to easily turn that into a leaderboard. And they would just email that out a couple of times a week to everybody so everyone could see where they rank. So you see, they didn't have to invest into any, fancy or sophisticated like game technology or even having a dashboard developed or anything like that. This is something that the head of that creative ops team was able to do simply by getting everyone on his team to track when they sent things out and when they were getting feedback. If you're using a project management system with an integrated review and approval tool, it's going to be that much easier. But even if you're not, you can certainly do all these things. And sorry, guys. What were the rewards they then gave? Because remember, it's about the competition, it's about status, it's about the rewards. So they had two types of rewards. And this is really about like appealing to people's both their extrinsic and intrinsic needs. So one was they actually had a little pool of money, not significant, and they gave out Starbucks gift cards. And they did this, on a weekly basis over the course of the next 4 months. For whoever won that week in terms of fastest response times for feedback and things like that. And then they also put a spotlight on everyone on the team. And internally, they actually had to do it virtually because we live in the time of COVID. They gave out, what I like to call Olympic medals for things for like, fastest this week, fastest on average over the course of the 4 months, and different types of medals like that. So that appealed to people's human nature of, oh, I did something good and I got a reward and now I can go to Starbucks and get a latte. It also appealed to that part of our human nature where we want to be acknowledged when we are doing something that is good and seen as positive. And that came through in the medals. That was highlighted not only to their peers, but it was also highlighted to those individuals, managers, and things like that. So it wasn't monetary, but it was still incredibly valuable in terms of how they were professionally perceived within their organization and how they were perceived by the creative ops team. And while there was no data to track and document this, anecdotally, it definitely had an impact in the people that were really at the top of that leaderboard and how much they committed to improving this process, and the perception that the creative ops team had of those individuals. And I think it probably ended up impacting maybe how they would react to projects that those individuals were involved with. And if my cursor will work here. No. And what was the ultimate outcome? Because who cares about the game if there isn't an outcome? So the outcome was that their feedback time was reduced by around 34%. So it had a significant impact. They ran this game over the course of 4 months. And as you can see, based on the story, it was really simple to set up and run. They didn't need any new tech. They didn't need permission. They didn't need a big budget. And they were able to achieve a pretty significant benefit. Now compare that to the non-game scenario of just simply pulling everyone into a room, taking them through a 20-slide PowerPoint presentation, and almost berating them or lecturing them on the importance of giving feedback very quickly. Everyone gets it, but you haven't made it fun. This approach made it fun, and they got the result that they were looking for. Okay. So the next one is reducing the number of revision rounds. So this one is actually a little bit more complex, still relatively simple, but starting to bleed onto the side of complex. So this one is, they wanted to reduce the number of revision rounds from version 1 to version final. We all know, we've all experienced that pain. And there's a lot of reasons why a project or individual piece of content often goes through way too many revision rounds than it needs to. There wasn't the right information in the creative brief. It took too long to get feedback, any number of other reasons. So they set this target to reduce the number of revision rounds. So the competition they had was to track the number of revision rounds, and this internal team had what they did is they set up a teams model to also create some cooperation here in addition to the competition. So their model was that they had a number of different business units in this organization that would tap into getting content from the creative operations team. And these business units, one of the things that creative ops leader noticed is that she was just like, they're always competing for our capacity. Because we have limited capacity. There's only so many people and only so many hours, so we can only produce so much content. So what she did is she set up a team-based approach where for these different business units, for this period of time, it went over 6 months, she tied them to a specific group of people on the creative ops team. And then what they did was, if this comes up here, there we go. They also created a status channel for them. They actually went ahead, instead of doing it via Excel, they were already using Data Studio, so they created a dashboard in Data Studio. And again, all they were tracking, they actually did get this information out of their project management system, is the time from day 1 of to day finished. And then they would display that information on this dashboard that was live in real time, and anybody could access it at any time. And the rewards is that the teams at the top, what they were rewarded with was more capacity. So remember, these teams were always competing for capacity from the creative ops team. So the creative ops leader decided to make that the reward. They were going to give them more of their capacity, because they always left aside, I forgot to mention, about 20% of their capacity for the unexpected. So they started to carve off more of that for the teams that truly committed to improving this process. And what they saw through this competition is that the teams, specifically the stakeholders, the ones that were waiting for the content and needing the content, who were the ones who would fill out the creative briefs and then provide feedback through the process, they improved not only the time from version 1 to version final, but that was driven by improving the quality and completeness of information in the creative brief. It was improved by quicker feedback times during the creative process. Qualitatively, it was improved by just more thorough and targeted feedback during the review and approval round. So they found that there was a whole bunch of individual benefits that really were aggregated to achieve their final outcome, which is their number of revision rounds on average was reduced by 23%. So that's a pretty significant improvement that they were able to achieve in this game that ran over the course of about 6 months. And there's more details behind this that I'd be happy to share with you after today's session. But that is a significant improvement. And again, they achieved it by designing a very simple game. And along the way, they improved their creative brief process and they improved their review and approval cycle times. But really the big win is they had a fewer number of revision rounds. So 6 steps to design and deploy your own creative ops games. I just showed you a couple of very simple examples. Again, a lot of this is really tied in, not a lot of this, all of it is tied into human nature. And if you can tie it into human nature, then, well, human nature says it all. Like people are just going to naturally start to do those things because you're starting to like turn the dials on things that we don't even know we're doing. They just happen naturally. So if you want to design your own game, 6 very simple steps. And like I've said a couple of times, I think all of you can go away and within 7 days, you could deploy your own creative ops game. So first of all, you're going to choose a target. So example, like a common one that comes up, I don't get all the information I need in the creative brief because maybe you leave a whole bunch of, you don't make all the fields mandatory. So if you're doing that, that's fine. So maybe the game you design is you want to set a target of, you want to get more of the fields in the creative brief completed before the creative ops team gets it. 2 is you need to establish a measurable goal. So you want to increase that from 75% to 90%, let's say. 3 is you want to set a timeline. So you don't want a game that goes on forever because games that go, nobody's going to watch a European soccer match or an American football match or a basketball game if it just simply goes on forever. There's always an endpoint. So you want to, have these games designed to go over a certain period of time. That last example I told you about went over 6 months. So they actually then broke it up into individual monthly games. And they had some prizes and things like that along the way as well, in addition to the final prize of allocating more capacity to the best teams. And so you definitely want to think about how long is this game going to run and should we split it up into smaller chunks just to keep people engaged throughout the process. Again, human nature, we like to think we're long-term thinkers. We are actually pretty bad at being long-term thinkers. So keep that in mind. 4 is you want to confirm that you can actually get the data to run your game. I gave you 2 examples. That data was incredibly easy to get. Depending on how simple or complex your game is, you want to make sure you know how you're going to get the data and that you've got a process for getting the data, whether that's tracking review and approval times through people's inboxes, through your project management system, or through some other mechanism. But I've never come across a situation where the data could not be available. You just got to make sure that you know where and how you're going to get it before you start the game. And finally, you want to create that status channel, because remember, human nature, human beings, we like to compete. We like to know where we stack up against everybody else. So whether it's a simple Excel dashboard, a data studio dashboard, or maybe you're doing something a little bit more sophisticated, you need to let people know where they rank against each other, against the target, in whatever other ways that might be relevant. And then finally, you want to establish rewards, and your rewards can be personal in nature. They can be professional in nature. So the personal ones could be those Starbucks gift cards. The professional ones could be that acknowledgement where they get a medal and their boss acknowledges that they did a great job in buying into the process and helping to improve something that's important to the organization. It might be getting more access to capacity. I saw one team do something about giving higher priority to the people that truly bought into the process and helped improve it. So these rewards can be a combination of personal, professional, tangible, intangible rewards, but those rewards are critical in order to get people's buy-in to the game and drive the process improvements that you're looking for towards the measurable targets that you're looking to achieve. And then finally, you just got to start now. I will keep saying it. I know like gamification and creative operations might sound something fanciful, but you've heard about two very simple examples today. These are issues that the vast majority of creative ops teams deal with at some point in time. And those are both solutions that anybody listening to this would be able to implement and deploy within 7 days, give or take a couple of days. But these are really simple to do. And again, if you want to, there's lots of other complicated or more complex and sophisticated ways of incorporating game design into how you are improving your creative ops processes. I would say start off with the simple. You got a couple of examples today. And if you did want to talk about either simple game design solutions or more complex ones for your specific situation, drop me a line and I would be happy to do that with you. So Christina, I will turn it back to you to see if there's any questions from our audience.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Nish. I love this. And I think all of us are going to go out and try and design something like this. If anyone in the audience has already done this, put it in the chat, because it'd be really interesting to know kind of what you did and how it worked out. So go ahead and put that in the chat. If you do have any questions, please enter them in the Q&A section. And Nish, I had a couple questions about the rewards, because I think that's the real kind of carrot in this carrot versus stick example. If you could give any reward for a game like this for creative operations, what would it be?
Oh, I think that really depends on your organization and the culture of the organization, right? And you mentioned carrot. I actually saw one team do this, and they were in the financial services sector. And because compliance is such a big thing in the financial services world, like it is for most industries today, but especially so in financial services, they actually made the carrot a little bit of a stick in that case, where they were trying to improve review and approval times. But they were sort of looking at it from the inverse of, oh, you're not complying with like getting this done within a certain amount of time. So they almost flipped it. But going back to your question, I think it really depends on the organization and the culture and what those individuals, like what is seen as valuable in that organization and the people that work there. And it's also going to depend on, are the people who are involved in this process that you're trying to engage in the game and get them to help you improve a certain process and meet that measurable target goal. Like, who are they? Like, what's their background? Like, I'm closer to 50 than I am to 40. So there's probably things that I value that somebody in their 20s is not going to value. So like, keep those things in mind. It's not a one size fits all.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I definitely see that already now with the kind of the incentives for going into the office. You can definitely see some of that.
That's a great point, because if I were in my 20s, I definitely want to go back to the office for the free snacks and the socialization and hanging out after work at the bar. But at this age, I'm very comfortable with my Zoom friends.
Yeah, I think we've all become comfortable with that. Brilliant. One last question. How do you think this could work for global teams? So I can imagine in a smaller team where everyone knows each other really well, that sort of competitiveness could get really exciting. Does this also apply well on a global scale?
Yeah, in fact, I think you can make it really fun on a global scale. Again, if there's so if it's a global team and you've got, your team in, let's say, the UK, other parts of Europe, Canada, the United States, other parts of the world, and they're all sort of generally, doing the same type of work. And you want the same target outcomes in all those regions, then in fact, I think you can make it a bit of a meta game and almost set it up like literally like the Olympics, or almost like here in North America, we're sort of big on these playoff brackets, right? So you could have like the individual countries have their competition, and then you could compare against status the countries with each other. And you could have like in-country rankings, you could have global rankings of individuals depending on the nature of the competition. So I think you could have a lot of fun with that. I think that's becoming more and more true for a lot of large organizations that do span the globe, where they're putting their creative ops teams out in lots of regions. So they've got they're closer to the culture of that region. Certainly seeing a lot of that in large agencies as well. So yeah, it's a great question. I would set it up in that way, where you've got in-country competitions, and then you've got country versus country, and now you've got creative ops Olympics.
Oh, I like that. I like that. All right. Well, thanks so much for the insightful presentation, Nish. And up next, we're excited to welcome our expert panelists who will be participating in live discussions and taking your questions. If you stay here on track 2, you can join James Sanderson of ICP, who will be moderating Hot House, In-House, or No House. And later, don't miss FOMO, fear of missing out. Your competitors are outsourcing, why aren't you? Followed by our final case study of the day, activating emotional resilience. I think we all need a bit of that. This is a pre-recorded session with psychotherapist and author Joy Langley. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of the festival.